Hey everybody, this is Mark from Circle of Dark Mother. Today I want to talk about how I work with the Qlippoth. So Qlippoth, you may or may not be familiar with it. So let me give you a brief introduction to what the Qlippoth is before I go any further. If you're familiar with Kabbalah, you may know of the Tree of Life. The Tree of Life is a glyph that represents the separate or spheres and net of it paths in the Kabbalistic tradition. The separate or energetic spheres that represent deity, archangels, orders of angels, and celestial objects through multiple universes. In Hebrew, Qlippoth means husk of darkness. This represents coverings that diminish divine light. Qlippoth is not evil by definition because anything that is not primordial divine light has Qlippoth. This is something that is necessary to keep creation from just being destroyed. So everything has Qlippoth, you, me, the world, and it's needed. It's there for a purpose. The Qlippoth are also technically the spheres of the tree of shadows or the tree of knowledge of good and evil, but this whole tree is sometimes called the Qlippoth. Kabbalistic literature refers to the Qlippoth, but the original works do not define it as it does the tree of life. All references are as a whole around Qlippoth, not with individual properties of spheres or paths or any other kind of detail. The details of the Tree of Shadows and the various Qlippoth were not defined until much later in later occult traditions, mostly in Europe and around the Middle Ages. Tree of Shadows. The Qlippoth or the Tree of Shadows is also called Titrahara, the other side in Kabbalistic literature. It is sometimes described as the backside of the tree of life or as a shadow of the tree. The tree of shadows is a single universe with spheres that describe the energy of, quote, demonic, unquote, beings. And I quote that because these beings, when you totally understand Qlippoth and a non-dual awareness, they are not pure evil like defined in most of Western tradition. They have a purpose, but I'll leave it there for now. This makes the description of the Tree of Shadows being the shadow representation of the Tree of Life more likely. This idea that it's only one universe because it is like a shadow falling down from all five universes. Each Qlippoth is a foil or reverse of its corresponding separate. Each is its husk of darkness or vice, the husk that resonates with its corresponding sphere of light. This means that you can predict the purpose of each Qlippoth based on the separate it covers. How I work with the Qlippoth. First, I want to say that the way I work with the Qlippoth is not the only way or the best way to work with the Tree of Shadows. Because I'm a Gnostic Kabbalist, I do not do path working of the Qlippoth. This is because I'm not draconic, satanic, or other left-hand traditions. That's not to say I'm against these traditions or that they're wrong or bad. They're just not my path. So I work in a different manner. I primarily work with the Tree of Life. However, I have found the Tree of Shadows helpful for my practice. My primary focus is understanding, embodying, and pathworking the Tree of Life. But because the Qlippoth are a shadow of the Sephirot, I use Qlippothic spheres to look at my shadow and as a shadow for shadow work. In meditation, I will focus on the Sephirot, but if I found that I'm struggling with it, I will jump to the corresponding Qlippoth to understand where I'm stuck. On the next slide, I'll show an example. This example will focus on Yesod Gamaliel. On Tree of Life, the second sphere from the bottom is Yesod, foundation. This sphere has many functions, but one of its attributes is dreams and desires. Yes, Yesod represents the divine name El Shaddai, God Almighty. There is a question as exactly what this means. The root of Shaddai could be Shaddad, destroyer, or Shad, breast. This would describe deity as either a destroyer or a nurturer, maybe both. Yesod represents El Shaddai, God Almighty. There is a question as exactly what this means. And as I said earlier, because it's could be destroyer or breast, is it masculine? Is it feminine? Is it about destroying something or is it about nurturing something? It's really a question. With Yesod representing dream and desires, it would make sense that the divine presence would be a nurturer who helps us generate these conditions. But could destroy the things that don't work. Gamaliel, the obscene ones, is also a place of dreams and desires, but instead the areas of our consciousness that we do not want to acknowledge or see. This is why it's called obscene, not because it's sexual in nature, sometimes, but not always. It's really because we don't want to look at these things. These are parts of us we don't want to acknowledge, we don't want to look at. Lilith is the demonic entity of this Qlippoth. And again, I don't believe Lilith is always demonic, but there is a dark side to her that fits this Qlippoth. I use quotes for demonic again because these entities are not what traditional religion would consider them. And I'll cover that in a separate video. The idea here, though, is if I'm working with Yesod and I'm having trouble because I see that there is a dream or desire that I don't want to look at, or something I'm not acknowledging, or something hidden, I will drop over to Gamaliel and work with that energy to understand why I consider it obscene, why I consider it dark, why it's a shadow. How do I need to uplift it? What do I need to do with it? So working with Gamaliel, when I work with Yesod, the domain of dreams and desire, there are times that I realize that I have a dark dream or a desire I don't understand. To get to understand this experience or feeling, I work with Gamaliel through meditation to do shadow work and understand its root. This leads me to understand how to uplift it and peel away the Qlippoth, singular of Qlippoth, so I can see the root. The other things to understand is that sometimes what we consider a Qlippoth in ourselves is not actually something that needs uplifted. Unfortunately, our culture and religion, and also our life experience, can make us think that something is dark and unacceptable when it's really something we just need to embrace. Other times, there are areas that are destructive to us or others, and uplifting it is the best course of action, looking for a way to transmute it into something that's not destructive. As well as meditation, you can work with the Qlippoth through ritual, either calling upon the entity that rules it, or by using correspondence to the sphere itself. There is much further we could go with this, but would take too much information for context and would be a very, very long video. So I'll end with this analysis. But the point being that I work with the Tree of Shadows or the Qlippoth as a way to find my darkness to do shadow work. Others work that tree just like I work the tree of life. And again, not criticizing that, that's their path. It's just not the way I work with it. Hopefully that was helpful. And however you work with the Tree of Shadows or don't, hopefully you learned something from this video. Thank you and talk to you soon.